Hey everyone, welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. We are in season 4 and we got a great season lined up for you. We are very fortunate to kick off our first season with Val Swisher, who is the founder and CEO of Content Rules. And that's a consultant firm. We'll probably talk a little bit about it, Val, when we get into it, that delivers content strategy, transformation, optimization, content development services, all kinds of interesting stuff. And Val, I'm sure you probably already know her because she's well recognized for her speakings and her keynotes and her books that she writes, one of which we're going to talk a lot about today. And the one that I really want to talk about the most is about personalization. Val has written the book, The Personalization Paradox, Why Companies Fail and How to Succeed at Delivering Personalized Experience at Scale. So welcome, Val. I think this is going to be a really good conversation.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Barb. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's start with the elephant in the room kind of question. Personalized experience. It is the nirvana of every marketer. They all want to do it, but we all define it differently, and it just means so many different things to different people. How do you define it?
Yeah. So I define it as delivering the right content to the right person at the right time on the right device in the language of their choice.
Right. Which is kind of how everybody else does it, but does it go any further than that? Or is it, I guess there's just so much in that one kind of statement, right?
Yeah. I think it's a tall order to deliver just the right content to that person at that moment in time on the device that they're on in the language that they need.
Yeah.
There's a lot that has to be done to make that happen. So maybe other people expand it or have other definitions, but that's enough. I think.
Yeah, that's plenty. So then that kind of leads to the next question, which is what your book is all about, this idea of a personalization paradox. What is that?
So the paradox is that here we are wanting to deliver just the right content for someone. And it's just for them. It's meant just for them. But in order to do that at scale, what I actually need to do is standardize everything about my content. So that's kind of a paradox, right? To deliver something personal, I actually need to standardize it. And that's really the only way to do it at scale. You cannot scale creating a piece of content for Tom and a piece of content for Susan, and that doesn't scale.
Right.
So to scale it, you need to standardize it.
So how do you define content standardization then? And are there certain things that need to be standardized in the content, or does all content, no matter what components are in it, need to be standardized?
Good question. So first of all, you use the word component, and that is the word to think about. Because along with standardizing, and I will talk about what needs to be standardized, the key is that you take big pieces of content and you chunk them up into small components. And then you standardize all of the components so that you can mix and match them and create a personalized experience. So we're talking about taking, something that could have been fairly big and chunking it up and then standardizing everything about those chunks. And when I say everything, I really mean everything. The words you use, how you use them, the sentences that you produce with them, the style, the grammar, the tone of voice, the paragraphs, really standardizing everything so that when you have this library of small chunks and you mix and match them on the fly at the point of delivery, they hold together because we're all saying, using the same words to mean the same thing. Right. And we're all, using the same tense. It's not like this is past tense and that's future tense. And now I put these chunks together and I'm coming and I'm going. So that's
So,
really the way to do it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, so, I mean, agree, understand, but I mean, obviously you're gonna need technology to help you do that. There's a strategy and a thinking behind that, obviously, first and most importantly, and then there's a technology, because we used to, years ago, the content management systems kind of chunked up content. And I'd use that term loosely. And then we moved to the idea of systems where you just wrote everything in a big blob, and then you had no componentization at all. But all those older systems aren't good enough today. There's something different, excuse me, that needs to be used.
That's correct. So, historically, we had document management systems, and they were very good at managing documents. But documents are not nimble, reusable, small pieces of information that you can mix and match with other ones to produce a personalized experience. So we needed to move to this component-based content management system where it really, the system really can manage these very small components. They have to be tagged with metadata. They have to be easy for machines to find. So yeah, the older paradigm doesn't work.
Yeah, but there's so many different technologies today that kind of sort of fit that bill that it's hard to kind of figure out which ones are the right ones that you need.
Very true, which is, why in addition to writing a book, I have a company because, we help people figure that out all the time. There are lots of competing systems, and most of them are very good, but they tend to have slightly different feature sets, and different needs lend themselves to different feature sets.
Yeah. Okay. So if you can standardize your content, and you need to standardize it to do this personalization, but I want to personalize my experiences for like hundreds potentially of potential customers or customers. How do you do that personalization at scale?
Yeah, it all has to be automated. And there are a couple of different aspects of what you need to figure out. Obviously, the first thing you need to figure out is what the person is asking for. And there are systems that try to figure it out in advance, kind of like, when I log on to Amazon, it has so much information about all the things I bought that it's really good about showing me things that I absolutely need. I just didn't know I needed them. So it's, so one thing is, do we want to try in advance to figure out what someone wants? And then once we have figured out what they want, then I need to have automation that can build and deliver the components that go, answer the question or the need or whatever. Right. In the technical realm, they've been doing a lot of this in the marketing realm. In the technical realm, in the book, I use an example. Let's say that I have a 2016 Honda Fit, and I actually do. So I like Honda. Nothing bad about Honda. So let's say I need to replace the battery in my key fob. Well, if I bought the car from Honda, they know who I am. They know what car I have. They have the vehicle identification number. They know a whole lot of information about me. So if I go out to a technical site to look for instructions on replacing a battery in a key fob, it should only give me the steps for a 2016 Honda Fit, because it knows what I have. Yeah. Right. It shouldn't give me the entire manual for a Honda Fit. It shouldn't have to ask me what car, because it knows what car. It shouldn't give me the instructions for every Honda ever made, if assuming the steps are different. I have not done a
Yeah.
search.
No.
And I really couldn't even tell you today what I get. I could tell you what I got a couple of years ago, which was not just the instructions for that. But we tend to know a lot about the people who are looking for information.
Yeah.
If we don't know it, we can ask, what car do you have?
Yeah.
You know, like, what car do you have? What year, what model, whatever. And then just give me that teeny 6-step, whatever piece of information. I don't want a chapter. I just want the 6 steps. Tell me what kind of battery I need and how to get that into the key fob, and I'm good to go.
So, I mean, it's obviously in concept, it's straightforward and it makes sense. You know me, you should know what I have so you can deliver me this information the way that I need to have it. But so many companies don't do that. Like, what do you think the struggle is for them that they can't figure out how to standardize their content and deliver those experiences personalized like that?
Darned if I know. I think, I think companies have started down the path, and some have been more successful than others. In my experience, most companies don't think it through before they start buying tools. They're way too tool focused.
Right.
And it's, sort of the next bright, shiny object in the room. And one of my sayings, I don't know if it's in the book or not, if you take the same crappy content and you put it in a bright, brand new, expensive new tool, you end up with expensive, crappy content.
I think I read that. I think that is in the book. Yeah.
So people do not seem to understand that they need to start from the content. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what tool you have. The tool is going to matter, but it's not, you can't buy a tool and expect magic to happen. Mm-hmm. You have to start from, have you componentized your content? Is it even possible to grab just those 6 steps? Or whatever, I'm not meaning to pick on it. It's just a good example, right? Is it possible? Or is my smallest unit that I can actually provide to someone an entire chapter?
Yeah. Which
happens far too often, right? How many times have we interacted even with a chatbot? Right? We know it's a chatbot. If it's a chatbot, at least tell me you're a chatbot. And instead of giving me the 6 steps, I get a chapter.
Right.
And then I first have to go looking through this chapter for the information I need. It doesn't need to be that way, but we need to start by examining how we create and manage and store and publish the content in order to make this work. And that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Do you think it's, well, maybe it's kind of a silly question. Is it a lot of work for a company who has, for example, all their technical documentation and their product documentation in the PDFs, the glorious PDFs that everybody used to love to create and still do? Is it a lot of work to take it out of those PDFs and standardize it and get it into a more of a component-based content management system?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work. Anyone who tells you it's not a lot of work is just trying to sell you something. It's a lot of work. Yeah. It's doable. And there are lots of benefits to doing it besides, in addition to providing personalized experiences at scale. There's savings all over the place. Content reuse saves time, saves money, saves a lot in translation. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to componentize your content and make it reusable. Being able to deliver exactly what a person needs, where they need it, when they need it, is one of many reasons. But it's not a small lift. I mean, it depends upon the company and how much content you have. If you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of content, well, it's going to be easier than if you're a 20-year-old company and everything is in Word or unstructured FrameMaker or Google Docs or some other, unstructured paradigm.
Yeah. The
So,
struggle
yeah.
to content silos too, right? People have the same content created in different silos across the organization. And it's kind of all goes back to that same stories. You need that content strategy that's cross-organizational. And it's a lot of work to put it together.
Oh, yeah. And if you can even organize one silo, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Never mind trying to embark on organizing all your content silos so that they aren't silos anymore. You
Right.
got to start someplace.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's such an overwhelming proposition that people really they just don't want to do it because it can be so overwhelming. And that's when I think you really need to get some help to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about globalized content? That's probably an even bigger challenge when you're trying to create content that's not just different languages, but regional contexts and stuff. Really changes the way how you say things and think about things.
It's funny, literally right before we started recording, I've been working on a blog post called Vigilante Content is Well-Intentioned. And sometimes we have what I call vigilante content, which is content that somebody out there created and distributed, and nobody knows about it except for the person who created it and the people who received it. Right? This is vigilante content. It's well-intentioned, and often it's content that is created in other regions, in other languages, for that particular language and culture. And that's trans created content. And I am all for trans created content. It's really difficult to create a personalized experience for someone else in another language, in another culture, particularly if your source English is full of jargon and idioms like almost every company's is today. Yep. I mean, I've got lots of soapboxes about the way we write content today and how not everybody wants to be your best friend, and best friends, don't translate. So I think we find that content being created in region is trans created for that specific purpose. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to get our arms around it? How are we going to manage it? It is a big, big issue, and really something that takes a much more global approach. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but, really stepping back and getting out of, our English, US centric way of writing.
Right. How do you kind of work that into the content strategy process? Like, is that something you do once you get started, or do you have to think about it at the beginning and really involve it the whole way through?
It's a really good question. I am a proponent of not forgetting about any language or region ever. That really trying to incorporate it from the beginning. In a lot of cases, it's way too overwhelming to add that. So what we need to do is we need to plan for it. We need to be aware of it. We need to understand, if I go down this path, it's going to be a lot harder later. So even though this other path may look more cumbersome or may look more expensive, we should go down this path because those 25 languages that I've been told we're adding over the next 6 years, we're going to be in much better shape this way. I'm working with a customer right now that moved to a structured content paradigm, environment, and system. And when they brought their content over from their existing unstructured world to the structured world, they really didn't think it through. And it's really not standardized, and it's really not componentized the way it could be. And now they've been told that they're going to be adding one language per year for the next 10 years. And they're going, oh, oh, oh. So, now we're backing it all up and we have to completely restructure the content. Otherwise, the translation costs will be astronomical.
Yeah.
And it's very likely that not only will you have 6 versions of English of the same information, now you're going to add 10 languages and you're going to start to exponentiate the versions that you can have of the same information. So it's much better to plan for it than to have to go back. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So tell me about your book, the Personalization Paradox. What made you decide to write it?
What made me decide to write it? Well, a couple of years ago, right around the holiday time when things slow down, I was really thinking about all the different things that I have learned in my career, which spans, the company's going to be 28 years old this year. My career spans more than 30 years. All the things I've studied, all the things I've learned, all the things that have interested me when they don't seem like they matter. So for example, I started studying artificial intelligence like, 6-7 years ago, before we were doing what we do today and heading towards AI. So I don't know why, but I started studying it because I knew that this was going to affect us. So that kind of thing, all the different things I've studied, the global content management, content development, taxonomy, metadata, you name it, reuse, all these things. And the book really is all of these things come together. I was finally able to figure out, oh, this is why I've studied all these things for all these years. They all fit together. And I was able to fit them together in this book that really, it's sort of the summation of, 30 years of creating content and managing content and helping lots of customers do the same, optimizing content, looking at translation strategies, understanding translation technology, and how does the translation technology interact with the writing process, and all these things, finally able to center them and show how they all related. And that's really how the book came about.
And when you read it, and so yeah, I'm not going to say I read it word for word, but I skimmed through the whole thing, and I thought there's a lot of really great information and things. It did kind of put things together for me that I would have kind of looked at as their own separate topics and not really thought about how they join together. But it gives a structure for people of how they need to think about what are the next steps for them. That's what I like, that you can take that and figure out, well, where do I start now? Like, what do I need to think about as I'm moving forward?
Well, I'm glad you found it to be that way. So that's good. Thank you. Yes. And, I wrote it with one of my colleagues, Regina Preciato, who really is one of the best content strategists and writers I've ever worked with. She and I have worked together for many, many years. And she really was adamant that we needed to have sort of a, where do I begin? What, how can I jump on this train? So we tried to put that into a lot of chapters of how do you get started? What do you need to think about? Where do you need to go? And what do you need to think about before you go out and spend money?
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely don't get the technology until you really know what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Big story.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So how did you get into the content business in the first place? What kind of drove you into wanting to learn more about how content is broken down and how you build strategies around it?
I think content kind of happened to me. It was not an intentional, it wasn't an intentional thing that I decided in college I was going to be a technical writer. There were no technical writing degrees when I went to college.
Yeah.
I got into technology out of necessity and where I lived. And, I'm located near Silicon Valley. So it became, that was a pretty clear choice. And I started as a trainer for a networking company. And don't ask me how I got into doing that. I don't know how I got into doing that, but I would teach people how to build networks. And I got burned out doing the teaching and started writing the courses. And I managed a training development group for a networking company for a while. And then decided that, I could do this on my own. And I became a freelancer like so many of us.
Yeah.
And I was committed to delivering quality content on time. Those were my two things. And very quickly, I had more work than I could do. And I needed editors and I needed artists and I needed writers. And I went into technical documentation because training, when a company has a bad quarter, one of the first things they jettison is training because it's not essential to selling the product. So needed to align with what was essential, selling the product. And it just sort of grew very organically from there. We still provide lots of writers and editors and art as well. Art isn't as popular as it used to be. I think photographs have replaced a lot of the line art that we used to do, but a lot of writing, a lot of editing, and just built the company from there. And I've been around for so long that, about 10 years ago or so, content strategy started becoming something that everyone needed, and the move towards component-based ecosystems really started to take off.
Yeah.
So it really started to grow from there. And I think having this much experience and having seen and worked with hundreds of companies really has given me a lot of information about what is successful in what circumstance and what should we probably stay away from in what circumstance. So it's been very organic. And our newest service, which is called Content Transformation, again was very organic, and we added it a couple of years ago. And Content Transformation is taking that legacy content and actually bringing it into your new ecosystem. And it involves more than just converting the files, although that's certainly part of it.
Right.
But it's chunking that content up. Sometimes it's refactoring it to the correct component type. It's rewriting it so that it's reusable, and then it's making the reuse happen. It's putting those maps together in a new way so that I'm reusing content. It's really kind of that last mile. And the reason that we can provide this service is because I have so many writers and editors, and we have all of this knowledge of content strategy and XML and ditto or whatever someone's using.
Yeah.
And I can put those two service lines together and then help customers bring that content over, which is usually the most cumbersome part of the whole process, because people don't have time. They have full-time jobs. They have to write new content. So getting that legacy content in has proven to be a very popular service that people need.
I can imagine. And it seems like it's the last couple of years where organizations have started to realize that their technical content is really critical for customer experience, not just for customers you have, but for customers you're trying to get. Really, the recognition of how critical, important it is has kind of pushed them down this road to have to do this transformation. So I think it's a great thing.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, companies are starting to realize that customers do check their technical content before they make a purchasing decision.
Yeah.
And you have to have it available. You have to have it. You can personalize it, right? So you give the potential customer the information they need when they need it on the device, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're not neck deep in content transformations and content strategy?
What do I do in my spare time?
Yeah. If you have any.
Well, now that my children are gone, I do have spare time. I didn't when they were growing up. My hobby is quilting. So I am an avid quilter. So I make lots of quilts and I give them away and I donate them. I have never sold one.
Wow.
Never will. But yeah, that's, I read a lot and I sew a lot. So that's I have there's a video out there. I do most of my videos now in my sewing room, and I have this board of thread, all different kinds of thread, all different colors. And I have a video where I explain taxonomy using the thread board and all the different ways I could organize my thread, by color, by weight, by material, cotton, polyester. And I go through what a taxonomy is, the size of the spool, so there's all these different ways I can organize my thread. And I have it all out on these big, they were print boards. They were drawers where you used to keep the letters for printing presses. And they fit most spools of thread quite well. So that's usually my backdrop now when I'm doing a video.
That's really cool. That's cool. Right. All right. Well, this was a great conversation. Your book, The Personalization Paradox. I'm going to make sure we have a link to that in our show notes. And I saw on Twitter that you actually have a whole webinar series related to it as well. So I'll make sure that we link that in for people to kind of get on board and see how much they can learn from you and all that topic.
That's great. Yep. There are 6 webinars that I did on the topic. So thank you. That's great. It's been really fun talking to you. You've got great questions.
Oh, great. I try really hard. Thank you, Val, for being with us today.
My pleasure, Barb. Thank you for having me.